It's time for the Acrisure Fan Advantage here on the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette's North Shore Drive podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We're joined today by Olivia Ray. She covers the Bengals for the NBC affiliate in Cincinnati. We're going to talk about some of the drama that's going on because there's some smack talk coming from the Bengals and the Steelers about this game. We're going to get into that, how these teams match up, get you ready for this game where Mason Rudolph will be making a start 2 days before Christmas. Let's get into it.
You are now listening to the North Shore Drive podcast, a show on all things Pittsburgh sports from the writers of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, hosted by Christopher Carter.
Hello, welcome to the Acrisure Fan Advantage here from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We're here joined today by Olivia Ray of WLWT, Channel 5 NBC station in Cincinnati. As always, you can find this podcast on your favorite podcasting platforms and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get all of our daily content that comes out from our Post-Gazette sports writers who put videos out every single day. This show comes out Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and sometimes Saturdays if the Steelers play on Sundays. Thanks again, Olivia, for joining us here. There's been a bit of drama going on. Tyler Boyd, who's from the Pittsburgh area, went to Clairton, has never been shy about talking about the Steelers in a negative light, came out and said that the Steelers show a lack of camaraderie on the other their side with the locker room, talking about George Pickens and his lack of blocking with the Colts. And that sparked a response from Joey Porter Jr., who said he wouldn't know. He's not in this locker room. His opinion doesn't matter. I feel like he's got a misread on the situation. Olivia, does Tyler Boyd, do you think that he speaks for the Bengals and maybe they're looking at the Steelers in a negative light considering they're on a 3-game skid?
I think Tyler Boyd has a great pulse of the locker room. He's one of the vets in that receiving core. And Tyler Boyd is coming from a media stance. He's a great soundbite because he tells you as it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it is how this team feels a little bit. I've heard it from no one else in that locker room, but Tyler Boyd was pretty blunt. And I know that I think there's obviously a little edge there every time he returns to Pittsburgh. There's always drama between these two teams, and it's more fun when they're both in a playoff hunt. But Tyler was pretty straightforward on how he believes that every man should block for his fellow teammates, and he doesn't believe in Pickens' stance on that. And then he followed that up with maybe a line he didn't necessarily have to add in, saying that he thinks maybe the Steelers are lacking a little camaraderie, like you said. I know that the Bengals pride themselves on how they've stayed together down the stretch. Everyone counted them out, just like the Steelers when their quarterback went down. They're counting them out now with DJ Reader, their best run defender, down, and they're counting them out even more with Jamar Chase not being available for this weekend. So it's going to be a nasty AFC North game. I know that. It is every time these two teams meet, but it always is a little bit more fun when there's a little drama hanging overhead as well.
There certainly is. And I think that Tyler Boyd represents an interesting position in this rivalry, in the history of this rivalry, compared to most other Bengals. Joe Burrow got here or got to Cincinnati, and when he started playing the Steelers, the Steelers beat up on him once, but then quickly the Bengals became the better team in the division, and they have been pretty much going into this season. But Tyler Boyd comes from a time, he was drafted by the Bengals in 2016. That was back when the Steelers and the Bengals were kind of pushing each other back and forth. And eventually the Steelers kind of pushed the Bengals out of the playoff picture, and they became the jokes of the division for some time before they got Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and things have stimulated. So I think Tyler Boyd's position, because he's also been very loud about the Steelers before. When they beat the Steelers, I think it was 2021 in the early part of the season, he said that team quit over there and called them out for that. And then was notably silent when the Steelers have beaten them in return multiple times since then. I think that there's always an interesting rivalry when it comes to these two teams. And especially, I think that the one thing is that Tyler Boyd sees there are divisions in the Steelers locker room. Mike Tomlin's been talking about it with George Pickens. George Pickens clearly, not giving the best effort on blocking situations, and teammates reminding him, even Jaylen Warren, the guy who was tackled on that play, saying, hey, if he was in that situation, I'd block for him. And there's no doubt these two teams have taken a complete 180 pivot turn from each other when they played the last time on November 26th. The Steelers won that game. Since then, the Bengals 3-0, the Steelers 0-3, and both having to deal with backup quarterbacks during that stand. How has Jake Browning embraced this locker room? Because he has kind of taken things over for the Bengals in a lot of ways.
Jake Browning is the early Christmas gift that Cincinnati got that everyone counted out, as I said, or doubted. He's been on this roster for 2 years, and he has absolutely won this team over for the past 2 years. This just didn't start overnight, right? I love to tell the story that Tuesdays, it's my day off in the NFL. It's the NFL players' day off in the NFL. Try and hit as many of their charity events that I can, whether it's bowling, whether it's a food drive, passing out turkeys, backpacks, whatever it may be. The one player that is at every single event for their teammate over the last 2 years is Jake Browning. He's there at every single thing on Tuesdays. He's at every birthday party, baby shower. Of course, he's had to take a little bit of a backseat to that, but he has a great relationship with absolutely every corner of that Bengals locker room. It doesn't end at the offense. So the team is wanting him to get his extra opportunity, and the man has made himself some serious cash over the last 3 weeks. He'll be in the league for a while now.
I mean,
He's sustainable.
Absolutely, and you had the feel for when he beat the Vikings, and you could say him. I'm not going to say exactly what he said because we'll get censored here, but basically saying y'all cut me, and now look at what I'm doing to y'all. And I think that people love to see that kind of a story, and it's certainly been remarkable. And both sides are dealing with a lot of injuries. Like you talked about, DJ Reader, huge part of that Bengals defense, huge to stopping the run. Jamar Chase, huge wide receiver, one of the best wide receivers, top 3 even, I'd say, in the NFL right now. He's going to be gone. And of course, Joe Burrow has been replaced by Jake Browning already. The Steelers dealing with their own injuries. They're going to be down to guys named Eric Rowe, who's coming off the couch to play safety, along with Patrick Peterson moving to safety because the Steelers are down their top 6 safeties right now, which is just insane what's happened to them, not to mention their linebacker situation and other injury situations that they've dealt with here. I want to break down some key matchups that we'll get into, where the Steelers can find advantages, where the Bengals can find advantages, all here on the Acrisure Fan Advantage here from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette on the North Shore Drive podcast. I'm Chris Carter. But first, I want to remind you, the Acrisure Fan Advantage has been giving you a closer look at the Steelers all season long. Every Friday when we don't have a show right before a game, we have exclusive answers to your burning questions from our Steelers insider, Brian Badko, who's on the beat every single day with in-depth, and then we give you in-depth conversations with an opponent expert like Olivia right here on the team that the Steelers are about to play every single week. So get your questions into the Acrisure Fan Advantage at acrisure.com/fan advantage for more information to submit your questions today. We're back here on the Acrisure Fan Advantage. It's Chris Carter from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. We're here with Olivia Ray of Channel 5 NBC in Cincinnati talking about Steelers-Bengals. Olivia, DJ Reader is a really important part of the Bengals defense, or was an important part. He's out for the season now, and that's going to be a big hit here. But the Bengals have also found a lot of different ways to cover up weaknesses this year because they've dealt with injuries before. I mean, Joe Burrow's been out for the longest time. They were supposed to fall into oblivion after that, and Jake Browning has them going forward. Is there a way that you see this run defense coming together? And if it does, who do you think on the Cincinnati side it will be responsible for that in Reader's absence?
Well, Cincinnati's run defense, I don't know if I can say it's come together all season long. They're 28th in the league right now, giving up over 128 rushing yards an average each game. So they've found ways to slow things down, but we all know what's going to happen in Pittsburgh. And Mike Tomlin's trying to run the football down Cincinnati's throats. DJ Reader, their top run defender, he's the heart and soul of the defense, but the Bengals were able to slow things down, obviously come up with a huge stand in overtime in the fourth quarter against the Vikings. It was BJ Hill up front. BJ Hill somehow coming up with the most opportunistic takeaways. He's had an interception in the last 2 games. Yes, you heard that correct. That's a defensive tackle.
Wow, that's insane.
Hilarious almost. But the Bengals, they've been gashed in the run. Really, they've been giving up a lot of explosive plays as well, but have managed to have 5 red zone turnovers in the last 9 games inside 35 yards or less, so field goal range. The Bengals have 12 turnovers. So, and that is obviously tops in the league for almost the last 5-6 years, I believe. So it's just the way that they're playing. It's like they just keep coming up with the football when they need to. So I don't feel great about the run defense, but I think right now their hope is finding a way to turn Mason Rudolph over or turn the ball over when it gets down into the low red zone or within scoring range.
I agree. That's got to be part of it, and they got to limit the Steelers' run game. But the Steelers have been limiting themselves in the run game of late. After a stretch where during and including one of the games that they played against the Bengals, the Steelers had 5 straight games where they rushed for over 130 yards, and it looked like their rushing offense was back. Najee Harris, Jaylen Warren, they were a 1-2 punch. Broderick Jones was energizing the offensive line. And in the last 2 contests against the Patriots and the Colts, they've gotten less than 100 yards in each time, and you can see the frustration building for this team right now. I think that it's going to be a big question if the Steelers can wake up their run game against the Bengals. And listen, the Bengals' run defense hasn't been good in the first place, and now it's missing its best for the best part of it. That certainly could be an advantage the Steelers cling on to. But they had that opportunity against the Colts last week, who also haven't been a good run defense, and they weren't able to get going against them either. That's where I think the rubber needs to meet the road if the Steelers want to take advantage of things here. But on the flip side, Olivia, I think the Bengals have a strength that they've been able to rely upon in the passing game, and it can go right after where the Steelers are hurting the most, and that's up the middle of their defense. Again, they're down Minkah Fitzpatrick, DeMonte KZ, Keanu Neal, Trenton Thompson, Elijah Riley, all those guys. I think Elijah Riley's maybe questionable to come off of injured reserve, but he hasn't even played in, I think, over a month, and so they're going to put Patrick Peterson and Eric Rowe as their safeties on the back end of the defense. Meanwhile, they have Michael Walker and Mark Robinson coming off the bench at linebacker to try to fill in because they're missing their top 2 linebackers. If I am the Bengals, I am saying, you know what? I don't care what Joey Porter Jr. said this week. We don't need to pick at that right now. I might even pass on Levi Wallace. I'm attacking down the middle. I'm going right after the center of this Steelers defense and challenging them. How good is your game plan with all those backups on the field? Because even though Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow out, you got Jake Browning, who's cooking right now. You got T. Higgins, who can get it done, and he has got it done several times in his career against the Steelers, as well as Tyler Boyd. And you even got talented tight ends. Heck, you scored a touchdown with your tight end in the last game. I think that is a key factor that the Bengals need to chime in on this game.
Absolutely. T. Higgins, in fact, has played the Steelers 4 times in his career. 3 of those games, over 100 yards in each of them. So he's always been, I think, a matchup problem in Pittsburgh. And like you said, objective number 1 for Jake Browning, attack the middle of the defense. The issue for him at the first time around, and this was his first career start, but he held on to the ball way too long against the Steelers front. I know we all had Cam Hayward circled to see if he'd clear concussion protocol. He obviously did, but Jake knows he held on to the ball way too long. His first time out against Pittsburgh, he felt the turf a few too many times here in Cincinnati when that happened. So the screen game's been working well for him. He's been getting rid of the football at lightning speed pretty well. The screen game that we really haven't seen in Cincinnati for a few years. So that's working right now, but like to see him open things up a little bit in the middle of the ball field, as we were saying, or in the middle of the Steelers defense against someone that is obviously hurting there. So the matchups are there all over the place, but it's going to be nasty. We know that. It's every AFC North battle is, especially when the 2 teams are fighting for their playoff lives.
Shout out to my partner on the Pit Beat, Noah Hiles. They're throwing the record books out the window with this AFC North division rivalry here. But to your point, T. Higgins, he's dominated when he's gotten a chance most times. Again, 3 out of the 4 times he's played the Steelers, he's been able to take up those numbers. I look at this game and I think that, man, like, this is an opportunity for Jake Browning to continue to grow, because even in the time when he started to hold the ball a little bit and he tried to get the ball out quickly against the Steelers, he threw an interception to Trenton Thompson on a play that flipped the game over in the Steelers' favor. That was maybe the turning point of the game, and that was because the Steelers were using one of the things that they do a lot. They love to disguise their coverages, show one thing, fake another. I'm not so sure that the Steelers can do that this time around. When you look at all the safeties, the huge part of that is that they communicate and they have all the guys in the back end. And even with Keanu Neal was out, Minka Fitzpatrick, DeMonte KZ, they could work with a guy who was off the practice squad and Trenton Thompson and say, hey, you just do your job on this play. We got the rest of the parts. And that leads to plays like that. But I don't think Jake Browning has to worry too much about disguises in this game, unless the Steelers surprise me and they come out with a whole bunch of disguise packages still, and they get all these Eric Rose, if they can get the Michael Walkers and the Mark Roberts, if they can get all those guys on the same page to do that, it will be a heck of a coaching effort. I just think that's a very long way to doing that. We want to get to our predictions here and the biggest factors that we see playing into those predictions here on the Acrisure Fan Advantage from the North Shore Drive podcast. But first, we'll remind you that this show is also sponsored by Mike's Beer Bar, the best bar in all of Pittsburgh. When you go down to the North Shore, it's right on Federal Street, across the street from PNC Park. You go there, they have over 20 televisions to watch whatever game you want: NFL, college football with bowl season, college basketball, NBA, NHL, even Premier League soccer. You can reserve televisions with TVs, with tables, to make sure that you and your friends see your favorite game. And while you're there, there's over 500 different available beers. 300 of those are from the local area, 80 of those local beers available on tap. And when you get there, they're always cycling in new beers so that you can get new experiences every single time. You'll never run out of options, because I never do, and I'm always there. Check out their Steak on a Stone for an awesome meal, where every time you get your choice of cut a steak brought to you on a heated stone. With every piece you cut off, you press it into the stone, and you can choose how well done you want every single bite of your steak, only at Mike's Beer Bar, the best bar in all of Pittsburgh. Go down to Mike's Beer Bar to get your sports fix and experience the best bar in Pittsburgh. And when you get there, tell them Chris sent you. We're back here on the North Shore Drive podcast for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, and it's the Acrisure Fan Advantage here with Olivia Ray of Channel 5 NBC in Cincinnati. Olivia, let's get down to how this game's going to play out. I think there are two ways this game or three ways, this game can play out. A, Cincinnati's offense will take over against the hurt-up Steelers defense. They put up a lot of points. This isn't even close. The Steelers lose embarrassingly at home. B, the Steelers and the Steelers find a way to keep it close, and the Bengals hold on, or they Jake Browning just enough to get them over the hump. Or C, the Steelers find some ridiculous, stupid way to win this game and pull it out at the end with Mason Rudolph, and everyone's making Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer jokes 2 days before Christmas.
Layup right there.
Listen, I already told people, if you follow me on Twitter at Carter Critiques, you know I use the Yoshi Bonk GIF if you like to make puns, the bad puns on Twitter. If y'all hit me with the worst Rudolph puns, I swear to God, I will Yoshi Bonk all of you on social media on the day of the game. But that being said, Olivia, I talked about those three different ways here. I kind of lean toward the second one. I think this is going to be a competitive game. I don't think the Bengals are going to run away with it, but I do think that they have an edge here with their strengths versus the Steelers' weaknesses right now, unless the Steelers have some remarkable turnarounds on multiple parts of their team.
I agree. I had to give a score prediction I was looking up, so I made sure I'm giving the same one. I'm not tweaking them across platforms. So I went with the Bengals 20 to the Steelers 17. I think it's going to be close. It's going to come down to some insanity at the end, like many of the Bengals games have been. Jake Browning's now won 2 of his 3 starts in overtime. So I know the Bengals would love to not have another overtime game, as they're on another short week here for them. They'd like maybe a little bit of a break, not that extra time. But it will be a close game. I think another big game for Tanner Hudson, Bengals tight end, T. Higgins, step up, made it the touchdown catch of the week last week in week 15. Insane. He's a freak athlete. He said it was big for his confidence to get kind of back in a rhythm and show that he can step up in Jamar's absence. So they played and won that game without him down the fourth quarter in overtime without Jamar. So we'll see what they can do another time around against Pittsburgh. I know Jake likes to find something to hold on to, I think, to kind of light a fire in himself. And he keeps telling everyone that he played like crap the first time he played Pittsburgh. So that's all he needs to see when he sees the tape.
Yeah, I think that's the thing is he's gonna look at that. He's gonna motivate himself, and I do think motivation is gonna be very interesting for both sides here. The Steelers both, and here's the other thing about this. This is also an important game, not just for the rivalry's sake, but both teams. If either team loses this game, they're not eliminated, but their playoff chances go like below 10%. And
Right.
that is where I think that you're fighting for your playoff lives right now. The Bengals are in a position that, like you said, I agree with you. After they lost that game to the Steelers, I think most people wrote the Bengals off. They're like, they're done. Jake Browning's not it. And then all of a sudden he lights it up against the Jaguars and he's looking really good. Now he's got them on a 3-game winning streak. When the Steelers beat the Bengals, they're like, it was their first game having 400 yards of offense since 2020. Everyone's thinking they figured things out. And it is insane how just, again, the 180 both of these two teams have had since then. And to me, I'm right with you. I think I had a prediction of 19-16, very similar to yours. I just think that when Steelers play the Bengals, weird things happen, man. Missed field goals, missed extra points, blocked field goals. All of that is on the table for what's going to happen in this game. But I still think that even if I think the game is going to go this way, it's going to be the fourth quarter. Mason Ruff's going to lead a touchdown drive or a big field goal drive that gives the Steelers a late lead. But then Jake Browning's going to get about 2 minutes, 3 minutes on the clock, and he's going to work his way down the field. And he's going to get the game-winning touchdown or field goal to put the Bengals ahead, and that's how they would win 19-16 in my book. I just think that the Steelers, Mason Rudolph, if the offensive line blocks correctly and Najee Harris does what he's supposed to do and Jaylen Warren does what he was supposed to, and the offense plays the way that it did before Kenny Pickett's injury, and even Mason Rudolph just gets them back to that level, they don't have the defense to hold teams the way they did in prior games because of how hurt up they are. And I think back to their wins over the Bengals, over the Packers, over the Titans, over the Raiders. Very similar scripts where the offense did just enough, and then the defense said, we're going to hold this lead. I just don't think the Steelers have that answer to close out as strong against this Bengals team on Saturday.
Yeah, we'll see if the Bengals can get to 4 in a row in the rain, mind you. That'll make things even weirder too if it rains in Pittsburgh.
It's going to be an ugly one, I think, in a lot of ways, but we'll see how everything plays out. She's Olivia Ray. Olivia, thanks so much for joining us here on the Acrisure Fan Advantage. Let people know they can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
I'm on Twitter, X, of course, Olivia Ray TV, and I post all the viral Jamar Chase comments. So when there's more drama coming out of this locker room about Pittsburgh, I'll make sure and throw it up there for you guys.
We appreciate you so much for joining us here. You've been a great guest here on the Acrisure Fan Advantage. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. Read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. Find this show, the North Shore Drive podcast, every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, sometimes Saturday, as we break things down on your Pittsburgh Steelers and all of our content from all of our Post-Gazette writers. We'll see you here Saturday. We'll have our full team of writers at the game. I'll be there at Acrisure Stadium as well, giving you our thoughts on what happened Saturday, and then we'll try to get up a Sunday, maybe Christmas Day episode here for the North Shore Drive podcast. Thanks again, Olivia, and thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you here after the game Saturday night for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all the sports coverage from the Post-Gazette that we have to offer, visit post-gazette.com.